it's time for organizing observation. And we're very lucky to have one of the main observers and participant in the movement, Lulu Friesdat, journalist, filmmaker, whose work on election security is legendary. She's worked in network news for over 10 years, contributed to Emmy award-winning programming at ABC. Her election security investigations on Now This have been viewed by over 4 million viewers, 4 million hits. She is a contributor to The Hill, where she's written 2 op-ed pieces. And if you're online, I mean, it tires me out sometimes just keeping up with her new stuff, which is usually always groundbreaking. Lulu!
Hi, I love this thing that Emily did. How did you do that, Emily? You just like took this over and like used it like a real mic?
No, it was a different mic.
Oh, she had a mic? So cool. I'm like, she's a rock star. That's funny. It's just so much more conversational. Hi, how are you? It's so great to see everybody here. I'm amazed at your energy, your intelligence, your passion, your insight, your determination in the face of obstacles. It's an amazing, amazing team.
And you are too.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. So, this is about the future, and especially the next year coming up, 2020, which I know we all have a lot of ambition and apprehension about. I think that'd be fair to say. So I'm going to try to keep my part a little bit shortish so that then there can be dialogue back about what I'm talking about and I can get input and ideas. And I've been in a lot of conversations this year, and so what I'm talking about here today is not just aspirational. It is aspirational in the sense that it is in progress, but it is actually happening. I have been having many, many conversations with many of you and other people, large organizations who I can't necessarily name, but things are happening and I'm excited to share them with you. So my name is Lulu Friesdat. Bob introduced me, and this year with colleagues, Jim Soper, who helped organize this entire adventure, and Holly Mosier, the 3 of us started something called Smart Elections. And the idea of Smart Elections is a lot about connectivity. There are so many people working on election reform, but sometimes in silos. And what I realized is that if we could harness that collective energy in a more focused way, we could elevate election reform to an urgent national priority. And so we talked about really reaching out to a lot of different groups that are working, individuals, and trying to bring them into an election security platform, how to help them understand that election security is absolutely central to everything that they're doing and is a foundation for their work to be meaningful, and also figure out how we can support their work and how we can all work together to really give election reform the kind of visibility that other major movements have. Things like climate change, immigration reform, criminal justice reform. Election reform is that important, if not more important. All of those issues rest on the foundation of how we make our decisions. And so to communicate that message effectively to individuals and organizations and help them to understand this is a crisis, we need their help to solve this crisis, we need this to have visibility in order to actually get meaningful change. So what we've started this year is something called the Count the Vote Initiative. And the idea is to get off of defense and onto offense. And this is so important to me. Why are we on defense? And why have we been on defense for almost 20 years when so many smart, passionate people have understood that this issue is incredibly important and that our elections are not secure, that possibly our elections are not accurate? Why can't we make any progress? And I don't know if this is big enough for you to see, but I just copied this. This is the Cybersecurity Public Working Group for NIST. This is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they work with the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, and they have working groups that advise the Election Assistance Commission and advise NIST. And this is the Cybersecurity Public Working Group, and anyone can join it, but who is on it? Anyone can join it, but who is on it? Someone from NIST who runs it, the EAC, then you've got Hart InterCivic, you've got Lockridge. Hart InterCivic is a vendor, for those who don't know, they make voting machines. Lockridge is, I believe, also a vendor. You've got Election Systems and Software, a vendor, 2 people actually there. You've got 1 person from Verified Voting, another person from Verified Voting, Microvote, Microsoft, and this is actually, I don't think even a fair representation. I have been on the Cybersecurity Working Group phone calls for on and off for about 2 years, and I will tell you that those calls are dominated by vendors. They are so consistent at being on those calls. And why? Why? Even though it's a tedious call for an hour and a half, it's painful. It's like having your teeth pulled every other week. They are on there because they know that is where policy is being made that determines what kind of voting machines we're all going to vote on. And believe me, they push back at every single security advance that is requested, that is suggested. Even something that is very standard in industry, like having a manifest of where, of all of the different parts in your equipment and where they come from. It's something totally standard in other industries. The vendors would say, we couldn't possibly do that. The vendors on the call said, well, it would just be overwhelming for us. We couldn't do it. So there's the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, first off, is a somewhat toothless commission because it doesn't have any regulatory power, but the states do, to a certain extent, look to the EAC for leadership and look at those guidelines. And those guidelines, even the new ones, the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines 2.0, are being, to a large extent, determined by vendors. So, for example, there were 50,000 comments to the Election Assistance Commission asking that they ban any kind of internet connectivity in the next generation of voting machines. Something so basic. Every single election security expert has said that we cannot have our voting systems connected to the internet. But to date, the EAC has refused to say that they are going to ban internet connectivity in the voting machines. And I just texted a Canadian Free Child, a public citizen, just now, just to confirm with her, have they banned it yet? And she said, no, not as of yet. She said it's not final, but still. So this is what we're up against. And so that is why we're launching this. Oh, and so if you would like to read my latest op-ed, I would love to have you read it and share it. This is voting machines pose a greater threat to our elections than foreign agents. So that's on the Hill, and it tells some of the story that Lynn Bernstein talked about what happened in North Carolina and some of the other states. It's happening it's parallel situations in many states where the vendors are really controlling what type of voting systems we're voting on, even though voters and security experts are recommending and in some cases pleading for very different systems. So we've got to get off of defense and onto offense. And how do we do that? We do that in the same way that many people have talked about this weekend. We have to take these things into our own hands. And that's what the Count the Vote initiative is about. It's about making sure that the 2020 election is accurate and secure to the best of our ability. And so what we're trying to do with Smart Elections, we are partnering with election reform groups all over the country to create action hubs that will help to ensure the accuracy and the security of the vote. And how will we do that? The plan is to train volunteers in as many communities as possible to advocate for secure protocols and then monitor the accuracy of the vote count, including working the polls, monitoring the polls, getting documentation of poll tapes and digital ballot images. And I want to just tell a brief little story. I worked with a group in Westchester County, over the past few months, they had the Dominion ice machine coming their way like a speeding train. It was just on track. When they found out about it, their board of legislators was literally about to approve $6 million to buy 300 ballot marking devices for use by all voters. And these are very insecure systems that have been demonstrated that the security experts agree have the ability to that have the ability to print additional votes on paper ballots after the voter casts them. This is a very serious security vulnerability, and they knew about it. And what they did, they emailed me that this was happening there, and we really kind of put the word out in a very broad-based way. I contacted election security experts who wrote letters to their board of legislators. Richard Murrow wrote a letter, Andrew Appel wrote a letter, he eventually actually testified in person at the New York State Board of Elections. They went and reached out to their board of legislators and got them up to speed on this issue and sent these expert letters to them and met with them. And eventually what has happened, when we also reached out to different communities, we reached out to the disability community there and found out that they actually hated these machines, even though they were being put forward as machines for voters with disabilities. And I produced a 3-part series on this, which is actually on our website smartelections.us, and you can go, the first 2 parts of it are up, and it's a video series where you can watch kind of this whole story that unfolded in Westchester. And what happened was they managed to halt this train. So their board of elections did not spend $6 million on these. Their election officials have managed to find some money in some pocket that they had somewhere pre-approved and managed to buy 30 of these machines, but they didn't buy 300 for all voters. So definitely at least a partial victory. And what I've realized from that is that there are sectors in any community that if you bring them together and connect them can be more effective. And those sectors that we identified were people who care about elections, election officials, elected officials, local security experts, and local media. And so part of the Count the Vote initiative is to bring those sectors together in as many communities as possible across the country. And we want to try to do that with regional hubs. And I've been talking to people here, to Karen McKim in Wisconsin, to Jan Van Doore in Michigan, to activists in Oakland, and the Bay Area, and we're also, Smart Elections has been in touch, as I said, with groups across the country, to Garland in Georgia. Emily and I have been in conversation about how we can work cooperatively together. So the idea is to work with people who have a deep knowledge base about this and start to try to send more people their way to try to really create these regional hubs that can activate these sectors in their community and work to get strong security protocols, and then especially to monitor the 2020 election so that we can actively know, are these elections accurate or do we have problems? And we've also reached out to Dan North at Democracy Counts. I think I have a list here. So these are the groups that we were talking about bringing together. These are the groups that I have confirmed, that I've had confirmed conversations with that definitely want to work with us. Some of them I've mentioned, Audit USA. Ronaldo Pearson of Represent Us is an incredible activist. He just did a 700-mile walk from Atlanta, Georgia to Washington, D.C. to really bring to light the problems with our democracy, and election security is one of his big agenda items. He's passionate about working with us. Virginia Martin, we're bringing on board to help us with this initiative. And then we're in conversation with more people. We're bringing more and more people on board every day. So what we're excited about is that we have an incredibly deep knowledge base, and we have people who are interested in working cooperatively. That's the whole idea, is that we work cooperatively and share our information, and nobody has to, dictate what's going to happen. People are working within their own organizations so they can be comfortable about making those decisions, what ultimately at the end of the day they want to do. But we can also have templates for best practices, guidelines, like Emily said, to help people get up to speed, things like that. One thing I did, this is really, I think, important. This is something that we identified at Smart Elections pretty early on. The groups, the sectors that we think have potential to bring together as part of this election reform movement, and that includes the voting rights movement. Barbara, I'm looking at you. I'm saying I want to have conversations with you. I was touched by your passion and all of the work that you've done over the years, and definitely want to be in touch. Disability rights groups, there has historically been a real battle between disability activists and advocates and election security advocates. And we have to build those bridges. We have to have conversations and figure out solutions for that. Because the solution is not for each side to just, advocate as strong as possible and, see if they can slay the other side somehow, or, and one of the things that's happened when I've had conversations with disability advocates is when I really bring them into the security conversation and let them know all of the vulnerabilities of the machines they're voting on, they really want secure machines. They want their vote to count. And when they tell me all of the challenges that they've experienced trying to vote as a voter with a disability, then I become much more compassionate about their concerns. And I understand, when Lisa Tarantino, who's on our, she's a disability advocate, tells me that she has protested, like literally crawling out of her wheelchair and crawling up the stairs of the New York State Capitol. I mean, it really moved me. It really touched me. And they've taken the county board of election to court year after year and still have problems, even just having ballot marking devices available that are even functioning. So we have to be compassionate about each of these communities that we're interacting with and really come to the table with an open mind and an open heart and say, what are your needs? These are our concerns, and have that dialogue. So these are the other sectors that we're reaching out to and working with: anti-corruption, gerrymandering organizations, the National Popular Vote, an incredibly well-organized movement that has very similar concerns and has a lot of overlap. I know ranked choice voting, I know Jan's talk was very informative, but that movement is very well organized and needs to know about security. These are the people on our election security team, our advisors. I'm very proud of our board. We've got an incredibly deep bench there. Benny's here, and Rich DeMillo was here yesterday. So those are the people that we turn to for advice when we're trying to make these security decisions. That didn't really work out. I think that's the end of my slides, and all I wanted to do was end on a slide that said, hey, you can contact us, which is the last slide. How come it's going to keep doing that to me? I was going so well, my slides were doing so well. Okay. You can contact us there. There's our website, smartelections.us. So if you're interested in reaching out to me, I do read the emails that come there, and I want to be in touch with all of you. So please get in touch. And then, do I have any time left? I tried to be fast. I have 5 minutes, that's all? Okay. Anyway, I want to hear from you. I want to know what your thoughts are about what we're up to.
Just get on the inside. I was a poll worker once, but I had to stop being a poll worker because it was my work. But I was a poll worker one election, and they were going to make me the head of that particular district. The next one, just like that, because they had to take the lady away and move her to another one. But she and I fought the whole time about whether people should be using paper, but she didn't disrespect me because she recommended me to be head of that whole district. You want to get in the inside and run for these things. Run it. And don't be on the outside looking on and complaining. Get in there and run things. Emily Levy would be a perfect registrar of voters.
One of my law school professors told me that in the 2016 election, he was approached by an elderly black man who, I think it was in Massachusetts, but I'm not sure because he's at Harvard. And he was talking with him about voting, and he said, well, I went to my polling place, and they didn't have my name on it. They turfed me off to the next polling place. I went, and he said, I went to 9 polling places before I found my name. This is 92 years old or something like that. And my professor said, how could you go to, how could you have the stamina, the energy to do that? He said, I grew up in the South. Voting is a precious right. I'm going to vote. Now, I'm feeling a little emotion from that. The thing that you're doing, and when I talk about, to just a general audience of activists or investigators or something like that, I come to it, for them from the perspective of, what is important about voting for youth? Voting is foundational. It preserves everything else we care about. Because if we don't have an accurate count, we don't get representation, we don't get to have people in government who are going to get out of the way, if not help us, with the crises that we are facing as a people. And that lands for people now. I only have myself and my little company the ability to reach limited numbers of people. People like you particularly, but also others, Sarah, Jennifer Lawrence and so on, are trying to speak to a large audience and reach that emotional point. One of the things that we lack in America is the emotional content. Why it's important to vote? Because we care about our system of government. If you can convey that, if you can get that to people, especially young people, because they're just about the most underrepresented other than black people in general, then that can help power their interest, in everything else that we're doing around the details and the technicalities, which are like, what are you doing that for? Well, here's why. Here's why it should grab you in your gut, because this is your future.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, bring our passion. And our humor also. Some of the people we're talking to about doing public service announcements are trying to figure out how we can do some humorous ads to bring people in. Great suggestion.
Is there any chance we could get some of the larger groups that are nonpartisan, like Common Cause or the ACLU? They have on their mailing list, even if you send a mailing out, and they have like millions of people.
We are partnering with larger groups, absolutely. I can't necessarily name them today, but we are partnering with people that have very large mailing lists. Absolutely, yeah.
First of all, thank you. I have 2 somewhat equally separate ideas, and I haven't really gotten down to articulation yet. But one of them is, we're going into a maelstrom here because there's distrust that's grown on every side. And the one scenario for the next election, 2020, maybe even beyond that, is the kind of thing where, it may the best Fox News talking head win when everybody starts claiming there's all sorts of rigging, whoever wins, whoever loses. It feels like it's coming down to a place where it's going to be some sort of pitched battle. So I think you need soldiers in a battle like this. It's very important. On the other hand, that's a very dangerous place for any democracy. When the big guns start coming out and saying fraud, fraud, fraud. So that's just one sort of inchoate idea. But it touches on the other, which is just a question as to whether you are putting any specific focus into specifically the media, progressive or mainstream media, in getting them on board specifically. I mean, you as a member of the media, would know best what the resistance has been, overcoming that resistance specifically in the media so that it does get out to the public in the way that, the public usually absorbs things.
Yeah, I don't think the media is the problem anymore. I know that for a long time we were all really focused on getting this message into the media, getting into the media. There is a lot of coverage about election security in the media. I mean, reading mainstream articles in the New York Times, on, my article in the Hill, Wired.
James' article,
It's-
yeah.
There's a fair amount of coverage. NPR is covering it on a pretty regular basis. The New Yorker magazine, Sue Halpern is doing great work there. That's why I started this with the whole thing about the Election Assistance Commission and the vendors, is because it's not about necessarily getting the message out. Where the message is really getting distorted is the information that the election officials are getting from the vendors. And the fact that that relationship is so tight and so full of conflicts of interest, we really need to drive a wedge into that relationship and maybe make sure that some of the election officials are reading this information that is in the media, that NPR and the New Yorker magazine or the Hill are publishing. One of the things that we're talking about is having a library of articles about election security in an organized way that makes it easy for activists to give a packet that's easily accessible, not a lot of technical information, but that will convey the information quickly and easily. Election officials don't have a lot of time, so they're not going to read, the Lord's entire paper, right? But I don't think the media is necessarily the problem.
Okay, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that's an absolutely crucial, conjunction point.
Yeah.
And that's what EDA used to try to do, up to a certain point. So, we did as much as we were able to on that. My idea about the media is that there's always been a very bright dividing line between pre-election and post-election media coverage. For instance, Lou Dobbs in 2006, up to the election, will your vote be counted, blah, blah, blah. Then the election happens, and the coverage, the nature of the coverage just turns on a dime. And anybody who suggests that there are any significant problems is either silenced or called conspiracy theorists. So that's what it's sort of meant about the media, is that when the shit hits the fan, on November, whatever it is, 8th or whatever, is the media prepared at that point to carry the stories, whether it was Ohio 2004 or Wisconsin 2016, and carry it in a fair way that doesn't just put a cover on the whole thing, as they've always done in post-election.
That's a really great point. And I think one of the things that we need to start doing is encouraging candidates to be prepared to challenge, to be prepared to pay for recounts, to save part of their funds, during their campaign and put it aside and be prepared and get over that stigma of challenging the election and support them with media and advocacy, to do that. Yeah, great suggestion.
Thank you for your videos and your writing. I really appreciate it. One question that I have, I really haven't heard this.
Closer to the mic.
I really haven't heard this strategy very much here. But in terms of the politicians that you connect with, people on that county board of supervisors, who are very specifically locked in to their relationship with vendors or whatever their decisions, why not have a list of those politicians to go out to these different counties and different groups so that people become consciously aware that these are the politicians that need to be removed. And that through that first conscious awareness, and then getting people to say, wait a minute, this guy's against democracy. He's against our rights. So let's get him out.
Are you talking about election officials?
The people who put those election officials in place.
Right.
So it's often the county board of supervisors that are behind the whole process and identifying those people and then getting them targeted to say, okay, we want to look at getting someone to replace you.
Right, yeah, I think those are good suggestions, but so, Lynn, in North Carolina, you got Secosta, right? He was the one who cast the deciding vote for the BMTs, was appointed by a popular governor, am I gonna say? Is that, what's his scoop?
He got the win. But the governor also is giving money to the vendor.
So, but I'm just saying, so in a situation like that, I'm just using that as an example, you've got an election official making a bad decision, and if you're gonna go back and try to target the politician who put that official in place, you're actually dealing with a pretty popular, no?
I don't know, he barely won.
I mean, is that the kind of issue that you could get a governor thrown out on? He appointed a board of election commissioner that made a bad decision? Like, it's very tricky.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think it's a great suggestion, but I'm just saying these are like very hard issues to convey to people, and people are often in elections looking at, you know, those big issues that we talked about. So great suggestion. I don't know how we would implement that. But I would totally appreciate more brainstorming. I think it's a great idea. How would we bring pressure to bear on politicians who are appointing bad officials?
We did that in Maui, for
Yeah.
example, and we basically started our own political party, Standard PAC, and out of that, we then really got a majority for the first time in 125 years in Maui, and the change has been phenomenal. So what I see here is that oftentimes you're going after the secondary or third level repercussions instead of going after the people who actually made those decisions and put the whole process in place.
Right.
So what we did is, by replacing the county board of supervisors, everything shifted significantly. So,
Can you email me?
Yep.
Can we be in touch? I would love to know about that template and how that happened and how that pressure was brought to bear. That sounds like a really good template, and I think we would love to hear more about that.
I do, and I have a little description of it, the 7 steps to any democracy. So I'll get you.
I'll grab it. Thank you so much.
I guess what I will say about the governor is that he barely won, but the reason he won was with the help of the NAACP. And we pushed on him to say, look, these machines suppress votes, especially colored votes, right? People of color's votes. So if you're gonna, put somebody in who's gonna put these machines in, and his response was, I put somebody in and I don't micromanage. So.
Anyways,
I just wanted to throw something out there. We gotta be really careful when we say security, because what seems to happen when we use the word security a lot is things start to become secret and put under the umbrella of national security and all that. And then those budgets that we're talking about, they too become secret, and all of these things just get secretized in the way that things are organized now. So I love the idea of election reform as opposed to election security, because of course, there's more talk about it on television. Of course, these things are. I just want to.
thanks for that.